felt like that 30 seconds was real long? You're like, hmm. Is it awkward enough? Do we need to do a little bit longer? Is that because those pauses, like for a lot of folks, as soon as it gets quiet, as soon as it gets still, and you have nothing to do right in front of you, it's awkward, right? It feels weird to just sit in silence. Now I don't know where your brain went, but I bet I know where it didn't go. I bet you nobody in this room thought of the French Middle Ages where they tortured people to death. Anybody? No? Okay, that's where we're going for right now. So thankfully, there's no picture of this and there's no video because it's pretty gruesome. But there's this thing that the French did, and other people did as well, but it is pretty prevalent with the French. It was like one of their favorite things to do. They would tie like prisoners and people that they'd captured. They would tie their limbs to horses, four separate horses, and then someone would give a command, and that's I'll let your brain take it from there. This was gruesome. It was horrific, and it was called distraction is the word that they used for it. Death by distraction. And we don't have the same level of distraction. Like that's not something that you and I need to be afraid of. We don't like that's not something we're going to experience. However, we do experience death by distraction differently. It's not death like a physical death, but it's a death to our attention, it's death to our focus, it's death to some of our relationships, it's death to a lot of things that we actually care about because of distraction, being pulled in different directions until we can't hold it all together any longer. Last week we started this series, Bend Don't Break. And again, this is kind of a football term that I've heard before. Bend, don't break. We're not going to give up big plays. We're going to take like the body shots, but overall we're going to outlast the other team. And when you think about the terms bending and breaking, we're like, well, I would rather bend than break because break sounds like finality. Like I don't want to break. I would rather bend than break. But here's the thing that we talked about last week. If you bend and bend and bend and you just continue constant bending to the world and what it throws at you, you're just like, I can take more on, I can do more, I can do more. If you constantly bend without a pause, without rest, without allowing yourself to kind of come back together and gather yourself back together, eventually, inevitably, you will absolutely break. And in this process, when you're moving in that direction, and when we evaluate where we're at in life and our pace of life and everything else, especially this time of year, it seems like we do this in January every year. We're like, okay, where am I at? What am I doing? What do I need to do next? It starts to feel like we are overwhelmed. We start to feel overwhelmed. We are carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. Like the most important things in our life are weighing on our own shoulders. I'm carrying the weight of the things that I think are the most important. And over time, that feels like it's overwhelming. It's not a small thing at all. After feeling that tension, then you also have this overcommitted tension, right? Because not only am I carrying the weight of the world, I've added more and more and more to it. There's fear of missing out all of a sudden that I didn't have growing up, but all of a sudden I have it now and I have it for my son. So we just keep on adding more and more and more things to my schedule, my calendar. It's like we're juggling eggs and we have a full carton going. I can juggle 3 eggs. I can juggle 3 things, that is it. But in life, it's like we're juggling the full carton. And someone's like, hey, I think you need to add this one other egg also. And the thing about juggling eggs, if you drop one, you're going to drop all of them. And if you drop all of them, they're all broken. It's just done and it's a mess. I don't suggest trying it. In addition to feeling overcommitted, though, we also feel overexposed. And this is where we are seeing, we are experiencing, we are processing more information more rapidly than any time in history. I mean, it is insane, literally, when we think about it. It's like, that is nuts. That shouldn't be there, the amount of information that we process on a regular basis. We are overexposed to this. There's a cumulative toll. The more information that you just gathered and gathered and gathered and embraced and embraced and embraced, and you continue to feed your mind and feed yourself, there's this thing that happens when we're more attracted to more information, and yet we're more depleted than ever before. Because over time, this is what happens. When we've put on all this pressure, we've carried it for too long, we have more things firing at us more often, more regularly than ever before. We get drained and depleted, and eventually we get to this place of ego depletion. This is where your whole self, like even down to the depths of your soul, you're just like, I have nothing left. I'm empty. I am depleted. I have nothing left. And if you get to that level, if you've seen people get to that level, you will notice a couple things. First of all, there's not enough sleep in their lifetime that could ever solve the problem. They could take naps the rest of the week, like for an entire week long, just sleeping, and it still wouldn't fix the problem. They could take vacations and retire and just go and be gone on vacations for the rest of their life, still wouldn't fix the problem. That's not what's going to change it. That's not going to affect it. You see, we have a very subtle enemy to our soul. And this subtle enemy, I know that some of you are like, here we go. Okay, we're going to talk about spiritual things. Yeah, we're at church. We're going to talk about spiritual things. It's all right. There's an enemy to your soul, though. And this enemy wants to work his way in there to take away from what you think is most important, to actually ruin, to subvert, to move you in a different direction than maybe what God has for you. He pulls your attention away from your desired focus. And if you think of like you have goals in life and you're going to aim at them, if you are aiming, but then you're distracted, our word of the day, if you're distracted a little bit off, you're just like, well, it's not quite right on target, but it's pretty close. It's like it's good enough. If you settle for good, you're going to be off target and you're never going to hit what you're aiming for. You will never good enough in order to hit a bullseye. There's a better and a best available, and so often we settle for what is good because of what we've been distracted to. So distraction is what we're talking about today. That which pulls our attention away from what matters the most. If we took a poll through this audience and through the world, most people, if you ask them, what's the most important asset that you have, the most valuable asset that you have? If you thought it enough, if you heard enough podcasts, you probably remember time. Time is the most important thing that everybody kind of agrees with because you can't duplicate anymore, you can't grow anymore, you can't develop anymore, you can't buy any more time. You have a certain allotted amount of time on this planet, and there's nothing you can do to increase it. It's just what you have, which makes it incredibly valuable, incredibly important. I would even say there's a different level to that, though, because just time in and of itself is one thing, but time with attention on something, time where you're actually focused on something important, that's like the next level up of just time, right? There's this author, Mary Oliver. She wrote this: attention is the beginning of devotion. Attention, your focus, your attention is the beginning of being devoted to something. Our attention determines what we're devoted to. You cannot ignore something and be devoted to it at the same time. Those are contradictory. You can't ignore something that you think is really valuable and say, well, I'm devoted to this thing, I'm just not going to pay attention to it for a while. You can't be devoted to your spouse in your marriage and also ignore them. It doesn't work. Some of you tried. You're like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So big question, what are you devoted to? In your life, in your world, on your daily basis, what are you devoted to? What is your highest value? What are the things that you want to focus on, you want to pay attention to? What are those items? What are those bullet points, right? This time of year, again, this is like evaluation period. Every January, you figure out what you're going to do different this year than last year. What is it? What have you been thinking about? You know what? I need to improve in this area. I need to do this better. I need to do this more. These are my top things in my life. What are you going to do differently? What are those things that you are devoted to? Now, if you had an unbiased observer that just kind of like followed you around and you didn't know that they were there, I mean, first of all, that's pretty creepy, and we would probably call the authorities about it. It's called a stalker. But if this stalker was benevolent and just like wasn't a danger and just followed you around and watched what you did and what you paid attention to, what would that unbiased observer say about what you're devoted to in your life? Would it line up with the things that you say you're devoted to? Are they the same? Now, I don't know about you, but I need to spend more time cultivating the things that I want to be devoted to. And when I'm distracted by something, it takes away from those highest values. So love, joy, peace, like I could list on and on and on. Those things that everybody, and the great thing is all of us want. Regardless of where you're at in your faith journey, you're just beginning, you're asking questions, you're not even sure why you're in church this morning. Great, we love that you're here. You've been a Christian your entire life. You're like, this is where you're at every single Sunday. Fantastic. Love that you're here. Also, both people, we have the same values as a whole. It's like, yeah, we want to be loved. We want to love. We want to care for other people. We want to have peace in our life. We want to have joy in our life. Those are not different based on your faith. Everybody across the planet wants these same things. Yet, how often do we give our attention, which leads to our devotion, away? How often are we not intentional with our attention? So, different question, kind of similar though. What are you distracted from that you should be devoted to? So, not just what should you be devoted to, but what are you distracted from it? What is difficult? What is a challenge for you to actually maintain that focus, maintain that connection point with? The scary thought, and I've actually started to watch some documentaries and read some things, and that's always dangerous, but I've learned something this past year, or maybe I should recognize it this past year, that there are people, their entire livelihood, like their income is based on their ability to grab and hold your attention. That's their entire job description. Would you just grab these people's attention, as many as possible, and hold it as long as possible? Essentially, can you steal their attention from what they actually want to be doing and just hold it there further and longer? It's like a thief. They're stealing your attention. They're stealing your focus. They're stealing your devotion from what you want. And this is what they get paid for. Now, this question, if you ignore this question, here's what I can guarantee. If you just don't pay attention to it, I'm not going to I'm not going to adjust it. I'm not going to address anything in my life because of this question. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to forget about it. And this afternoon, tomorrow, life just goes on normal. Here's what I'm going to promise you. Ignoring this question will eventually subtly steal and kill your joy, your peace, your love, those things that you want and value in your life. If you don't pay attention to this, they will slowly diminish, and you might not even recognize it when it happens. We get distracted. We get distracted with all kinds of things in life. We get distracted with the squeaky wheel, right? Like the things that are the loudest, the most urgent, the most right up in your face. And you've heard probably the saying, like, we're distracted with this busyness. This squeaky wheel gets the WD-40. And the problem is there's more squeaky wheels than we have cans of WD-40 in this life. There's a bunch of squeaky wheels all the time, everywhere, forever and always, amen. Right? That's the tension that we live with, right? That's where we're at. But here's the problem. As we progress in life, more is expected from us. More squeaky wheels are handed to us. We bring on some of it ourselves, and some other people hand to us. You know, we used to have to struggle like, I got to keep work at work and not bring it home. Now the struggle is, I've got to not become my work. Like, it's a whole other level than it used to be. Maybe it's just me. It's a whole other level, though. Your identity so easily gets attached to what you do. And this is not a good thing. This is not a healthy thing. This is not a thing that's sustaining us. This is not a thing that helps you move in the direction of your Heavenly Father. That actually subtracts. It moves you away from that. We've become our work. Some of you you struggle with something a little bit differently, and it's good things. Your struggle when it comes to your time and energy, your talent even, your resources, your struggle is that you want to give all of it away. Like, you love people. You're so caring. You're so kind. And just over and over and over again, you just want to give. You want to help everybody be better. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. You should want to do that. And if you don't save part of yourself to take care of yourself, eventually, there's going to be a moment where you have nothing left to give to other people. You're going to be empty. You're going to be depleted. You'll have nothing left, and you won't be able to help anybody else anymore because you've moved at a pace at which yourself cannot sustain for a longer period of time. You can't handle it anymore. And eventually, nobody, including yourself, gets cared for. There's this author, Corrie ten Boom. She says, I think this profound thought, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy because either way, your soul will shrivel. Think about this. I could talk about this for a long time. I'm not going to. Just a little time. Think about this. If sin and busyness have the same end result when it comes to your relationship with God, to your own well being, to the relationships that you have with other people? If sin and busyness both have the same end result, are they actually different categories? I'm just saying that's a good question to ask. I don't know. It's a good question to ask. We should wrestle with that. Right? The busier you are, the more distracted you are from the things that are most important to you. And I know that I talked about this last week. I'm not supposed to talk about this because people just, it's like, it's white noise because it's said so often. But we get distracted with the technology and entertainment industry as a whole. And I say both of these together because you can't have entertainment that is without technology. Like they go hand in hand. It's kind of, they're two industries that work together. But this is a massive amount of finances, a massive amount of energy, a massive amount of intelligence goes into us being distracted with entertainment. Like this is when I talk about like people being paid to steal your attention, those are the people I'm talking about. I mean, just think about your cell phones. When I got my very first cell phone, I think I was a junior or senior in college, and it wasn't because I was that naive. It's just that's how old I am. So when I first got my very first cell phone, it literally was a phone. That's what it did. That was the only thing. It was like, it was a phone. That's what it was. That's what it did. It was a phone. It was a phone. It was a phone. Now I walk around with something in my pocket that is more powerful than any computer I had up until that point that I got my first cell phone. It's libraries of information. It is a better gaming device than anything I'd ever had before. It's an iPod. Like I play all the music I want from it. I can watch movies from it. I can do anything from my phone. It's amazing. It's like an unlimited amount of devices all in one. If I just stacked everything, I mean, it's a level, for goodness sakes. Like I pull out my phone to see if something is level when I'm hanging things in church. It's amazing. It truly is amazing. And it is so distracting, right? I mean, I can be super focused working, and the moment I pull my phone out, I'm gone. It's like it's going to be 15 minutes because I got to read my email, I got to check my texts, I got to do all those things, and by the time I circle back around and pull my head up, I'm like, what time is it? What have I done? How did I do that? I bought a camera when I graduated college because I wanted something to capture images. My phone takes better pictures than that camera did. I spent a lot of money on that camera too. App developers, right? They develop and strategize trying to make sure that you are able to maintain your focus on what they want your focus to be on rather than what you want your focus to be on. Businesses, companies do this. I mean, I'm going to talk about Netflix, and to be fully honest, I have a Netflix account and it gets used often. So, we have Netflix. Netflix has this thing. I don't know if everybody that has Netflix has seen this screen, right? It's the one that asks, "Are you still watching?" And when you started watching Netflix, you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. We can watch whatever we want all the time," and blah, blah, blah. Right. Now everybody streams. And when they started to finally put this screen up, I think there's an initial reaction, at least some of us felt, like, "Oh, they care about me. They don't want me to be like unhealthy with my time. They want me to get out and go play a little bit, right? Get outside, go get some fresh air." It's like my mom. And the more I think about it, the more I know that is not it at all. So I think that this is just me. I didn't read this anywhere. I just thought this. So I could be very wrong. Sorry, Netflix, if I'm wrong. But I think that they have this screen solely because they know that if you are watching a series and it just goes back to back to back to back, and you get distracted by your kids, that's a funny statement. If your entertainment gets disrupted because of the children that you bore and love, if that's what happens and you walk to a different room for too long and you've missed too many episodes, you come back to it and you're like, I don't even know where I am. I don't know how to restart. I don't know how to go back. It's too big of a hassle, too big of a challenge. Now Netflix actually has lost that hook that was in you. They put this screen up and pause it so they know there's at least like an end mark, like, okay, the bookmark is set in there. It can't go past that point. We're safe. Like they'll at least go back to that moment, that spot, that episode, and they'll be close. They keep that hook in you. It's all strategy. It's not because they care about you. It's because they care about your dollar bill, and that is it. How many times have we been walking around and we just said out loud, I say this all the time, I wish I just had more time. I wish I had one more day in the week. I wish I had one more hour in the day. I wish there's 8 days a week and 25 hours a day. That would my dream. It would be amazing, right? Just have that much more sleep, that much more time with my family. This is the problem. If we had more time, we actually wouldn't put it to good use. It'd be put to the exact same thing that we're doing. Why? Because it's the same system that would be being put into. In addition to that, if you could have a conversation with your phone, and I know, don't tell me, well, you can, that's smart, whatever. But if your phone could talk to you and you said this out loud, what do you think your phone would say? Here's what my phone wouldn't say any words. It would laugh so hard it would start crying and not be able to speak back to me. It'd be like, what are you talking about? That's not real. You've wasted so much of your time looking at me. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's what my phone, we'll just talk about me. That's what my phone would actually tell me. In addition to devices and technology and entertainment, all these other things, we get distracted from the moment. This is incredible. There's a study done back in 2010, and this study was done by some Harvard psychologists, so some fairly intelligent folks. And they did this study and found that 47% of our time, 47% of our waking hours, we actually are focused and thinking about a moment that we are not currently in. That's almost half the time we are thinking about in the past or in the future. Not this moment. Not the person that's in front of us. Not the work that's at hand. We're thinking about some other moment. Which is, at face value, that is a miracle. That's like, oh my gosh, God, you gave us that ability. Like, we can do that. That is incredible. And also, there is a cost attached to it. The authors of this study, they said this, Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert. The ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost. There is something attached to this ability that we have. We are so easily able to step out of the moment, step away from what's right in front of us, and step to something else, and we miss opportunities. We miss what's important. And we know this, right? There's been so many studies done on this. Being present, being mindful of the moment that we're in, it's connected to all kinds of things. Like, it's connected to our happiness, and it's connected to our being content in life. It's connected to healthy relationships. We know this. This is not like mind-blowing information. Being connected to this current moment in time allows you to function at a healthier, better pace and rate of life. Yet how often are we distracted from that? Distraction is sneaky, right? It's like this spy that has this whole end game where it works its way in there and it sets the trap for us, and we don't even know that we're in the trap, but it sets the trap, and we get caught. We get distracted away from our faith, from our family, from our friends. It's like on every single sign everywhere. Family, faith, friends. It distracts us from those things. Why is that a common name, like a common saying, faith, family, friends? Because those are what's important to everybody. Those are the things that everybody's like, I don't know if you and I see things the same way, but we both see them as important. We both know that that's a conversation we should have. We should have a conversation about those things. We should have a priority. We should have some type of this is our strategy for life for those three elements. And yet that's exactly what distraction will cost you, is a lower level of all of those. A distracted life undermines our priorities. It removes us from the present, and it limits our capacity for love, joy, and peace. But that's what a distracted life will do to you and for you. There's a brilliant mind, Stephen Covey. You might be familiar with some of his works, but he came up with these 4 quadrants of important, not important, urgent, not urgent. And it's a way that you can actually categorize the things that you have to get done in your life. And what he would tell you and tell me is that the urgent things, not the urgent things that just get in your face, the urgent things that are grabbing your attention and not letting go, those things are edging out the important things. That the things in your life that you value at a high level, the urgent that you might not value that high, are crowding out and elbowing out those important things and important aspects of our life. This happens in our relationships. That's supposed to be the most important things in life, our marriage, our family, our kids, our friendships, like those things that we think are really important. Distraction, the urgent things are crowding those out. Not only that, what about your faith? I mean, let's be honest. How often are you actually prioritizing faith in your life? I mean, for some of us in this room, or a lot of us in this room, it's like you're willing to devote 1.5 hours a month to your faith. This is just like between 1 and 2 times at church. That's essentially what I'm saying. And now I know that your faith is not only what happens at church, but I contend that church is one of the best foundations that your faith can actually grow from, where you're actually surrounded with other people that think similarly, that would challenge you, that would connect with you, that would help grow your faith, that you would hear some truths, hopefully, that would challenge you, move you in a direction, that you'd be able to worship and be able to have like songs where we identify who God is, what God is like, what God thinks about us. Like, I think that church is pretty healthy for your growth in your faith. How much time do we actually give it? How much do we actually prioritize it? I'm not trying to throw a guilt trip out there, but if it hits. Let's move along, right? That's too uncomfortable. How to move forward from this moment? Like, there's so much. I know I've been super optimistic and super like happy times all morning long. How do we move forward from this? Jesus, right? That's the church answer. Jesus. That's how we move forward. We're going to look this morning at one specific moment, one story, and I love it. It's probably one of the most relatable, if not the most relatable story in all of the Bible. Jesus is visiting 2 of his friends. They're both sisters, and he's at one of their homes. And this is Martha and Mary, and there's a crowd with them too. And I love this moment because it's so relatable. And honestly, I think this is actually the first documented, quote-unquote, Karen that we see in the world. And if your name is Karen, I apologize. I didn't come up with this. The world decided this on its own. If you don't know what a Karen is, this is someone that just decides they need to tell everybody else what to do, even if it's not their place to tell them what to do, right? So we know these people in our life. I think that you'll find out one of these characters, one of these people is actually the first Karen. So Luke chapter 10, verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Super generous, very kind, good work. Continuing on. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Now, we're going to look at 2 very different approaches, 2 very different perspectives on what you do when you're in the presence of Jesus. Right, so Mary, immediately, she sits at Jesus' feet. She takes on the position of a disciple. She wants to learn. She wants to hear every word. She wants to embrace as much as she possibly can from this opportunity to be in his presence. Martha, on the other hand, has decided that it's her responsibility to make sure that everybody that shows up eats. They're like, there's an obligation that she feels like she needs to provide food for everybody that is in her house, which is a good thing. From the, like, looking at it, that's a good thing. There's an obligation there. There's a responsibility there. It's honoring, it's serving. It's good. It's good. Yet that has been and is her priority. And we're going to look at what happens in this moment. Verse 40, but Martha was distracted, there's our favorite word today, was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Now, the Greek word for distraction here, this is someone that feels something internally and outwardly is agitated. Like there's something going on so deep inside that it starts to bubble outwardly. Like you can tell that they're outwardly agitated. It's frustrating. And you know it. Like there's a noticeable difference in their life. Now, Martha hasn't quite turned to full-on Karen yet. It's coming, though. But I think all of us, we can identify with this tension. You know people that are Martha. You're like, yeah, you're gonna do the responsible thing. You're gonna do the obligation thing. You're gonna do what's right, what's good. What everybody expects you to do, you're gonna do that thing, even if it's not exactly what you want to do. I'm gonna do that because it's right. It's black and white for these people. It's like, no, this has to happen before we can get to that. Before I can go into that room and sit at Jesus' feet, this has to happen first. Does anybody know any Marthas? Right? Are some of you Marthas in the room? You're like, yeah, that's me. I totally do that. I know it. I'll admit it. Congratulations, we've just identified all the firstborns. That's what we just did. That's who you guys are. Now, we know this moment, right? We know this tension. This is so real to us. it's felt on a regular basis, especially if you have siblings. It's very felt, right? Because you have somebody that's working in the kitchen, and just like through the room, like just over there a little ways, somebody else is doing exactly what this person wants to be doing, but feels obligated not to do that. And I'm sure Martha, for a while, she's quiet. She's like working just in her own mind. But the more she's thinking about it, she's like, I can't believe I'm in here. Jesus is in there. I want to be in there. And she starts to grumble, probably a little bit audibly. Like it starts off silent, gets a little bit more audible. She's talking to herself. Like the chopping of the carrots gets a little bit louder. And then she starts to like engage with the people in the other room, like, oh, Jesus, yeah, that's good. That's a good point, Jesus. I'm just in here working. Can you talk a little louder? Yeah, I can't quite hear you because I'm working in here for you guys, just to serve you, make sure that you're all happy, taken care of. Can you just talk a little bit louder? Sure. And then, I'm sure it just gets louder and it gets more and more. Ha ha, that was funny. I didn't hear the whole joke. Can you say the funny part again? I missed it. The onions were really loud right now as I'm working. It's loud in here. I missed it. I want to be in there. Have you ever done this? Right? You've done it. Your siblings have done it. Your parents have done it. We see this. It's relatable. We know this. But then something shifted. Not only was she like shouting from the other room, she decided to do something about it. It's like, enough. She throws down the knife. She goes over. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to come and help me. And I love this moment, right? Because Karen has fully stepped into the party. He's like, welcome. Congratulations, Karen. You're here. We know that you're here. But in this moment, Martha, is 100% convinced that she is right, that there is a right and a wrong, and her spot where she's at is right, and where her sister's at is absolutely wrong. I think that before she's even done talking to Jesus, that she's turned her head to look at Mary because she wants to hear his rebuke of her sister so she can watch her sister's response. You ever do that? Where you're just like, Dad, get her because, and you're just like, I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see her crumble and get like destroyed by Dad in this moment. Anybody else? No? Okay. Maybe I'm the only one with sisters. This is not what Jesus does, though. Look at how he responds. He says, Martha, Martha. The Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things. Now, there's a couple things here. First of all, I think he says Martha twice because I think he needs to get her eye contact and focus back on him. Like, Martha, Martha, back here. Hey, it's you and me right now. Martha, right here. I also think that he says something here that most men cannot get away with. Like, I learned you're not supposed to tell a female that's upset that she's upset. Like this, you're not supposed to do that. If she says it first, then you're like, yep, I'm sorry. But you don't take that first step and tell her that. But Jesus is Jesus, so he can. He says, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. This is amazing. What Jesus just did right here. He responds full of grace and truth. And this is what our goal should be also in life. Right? Jesus is the full measure of grace and truth all the time. Not the balance of, the full measure of both of those things all the time. And he does it right here in this moment. He's probably the only one that can do this clearly, this obvious to all of us. What do you think Martha's response is in this moment? Verse 43. Mary looked up, winked at her sister, further infuriating her. Martha grabbed the salad she had been making, threw it on Mary, and ran to her bedroom crying. It's not, there's no verse 43. It stops at 42. That's the end of it. We don't find out what happened. Maybe this actually did happen, and they're like, we're not going to put that in there. I don't know. Maybe. If there were some people I know, possibly, very possible. But here's the thing. What Jesus did in this moment, he looks to Martha out of full compassion. He says, slow down. You're doing too much. The point of me coming to your house was not for me to get a meal from you. The point of me coming to your house was to be with you, to spend time with you, to connect with you, for you to be in relationship with me. That's what's most important. What you are doing is good. You can be justified absolutely in what you're doing. And what you're doing is good. But there is a better that is offered here. And your sister, as with most younger siblings, has chosen better. As you see, if you're paying attention. I have two older sisters, so this is the point of all of this, right? It's so relatable to see Jesus interact in this moment. And yet 2,000 years later, we can have almost the same exact conversation in our families all the time. Why? Because this is what people do. This is who people are. This is how we work. Mary is so focused on just being with Jesus. Martha is so focused on being right. There's something deeper at play here too, I think. Luke actually, he intentionally uses this word distracted. Right? This inward tension that becomes outward agitation. It's the only place in all of the New Testament that this word is used. And I think it's on purpose. Because I think Jesus noticed what was happening in Martha and he knew he needed to address it. And look again how he addresses this. He says, few things are needed. Hey, what you're doing is good. It's not needed. There's only one that's indeed needed. And Mary has chosen what is better. And it will not be taken. I will not take that away from her. And I love this moment because Jesus doesn't shame Martha. He doesn't come in and say, wrong, bad answer. Like, that was poor. That was a bad decision, Martha. Why didn't you think of this, Martha? What are you doing? He doesn't come out of that from that angle. He goes, I have something for you, and what you're doing is getting in the way of what I'm trying to do for you. There's something better available to you. Jesus, he points to the priorities, right? There's a difference of priorities here. I mean, we all, maybe, I'll just speak about me. I like hot dogs. They're great. They're wonderful. They're delicious. Hot dogs from Costco, cheap, affordable, and delicious. Amazing. A brisket that's been smoked by Aaron Franklin, the world-renowned Aaron Franklin, is better. It's night and day. It's not the same. There's something better available to you. This is the distraction dilemma. Even a good thing can distract you from a better thing. You don't show up to Aaron Franklin's barbecue shop and have just downed like 4 hot dogs on the way. You're like, I was just hungry on my way. You don't do that. You save every little bit of room you have in your stomach for the deliciousness you're about to experience, right? That's what you do. Jim Collins is an incredible author again. He would say that good is the enemy of great, right? There's something great, but so often we stop at good, and good becomes the stopping place. Good becomes the target rather than great, rather than better, rather than best. Jesus, full of compassion, looks at Martha. You could have chosen what is better. Her choice was to provide a gourmet meal. Mary's choice was to sit at his feet. There's a difference. And there's a difference for you as well, and for me as well. How we prioritize to spend our time and our attention. Martha allowed something that was good to get in the way of something that was better. And because of that, what was affected? What was impacted by her? Her attitude. Her anger bubbled up. She was angry with her sister. The relationship took a hit because of it. When you prioritize correctly, when you decide what is most important and you carry that out by action, you will find that the things that you prioritize in life the most, you will find them more and more present in your life. And we call them the fruits of the Spirit. Right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. All those things that we all want, those will start to show up the more that you prioritize this. And specifically, time with Jesus, right? Today, we're not going to take any half steps, okay? We always like to have like an action step. We always want like, okay, what does this mean for me? How do I change? How do I do? What do I need to do here? Today, we're not going to take any half steps. We're going to take the full step. So at the end of the service, we're going to collect everyone's cell phones. We're going to go burn them outside and send them back to hell from whence they came. Sorry. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. No. I think one of the most spiritual things that you can possibly do today is to take an audit of your time and your attention. Where's it going? Where should it be going? And if you're evaluating this and you want to do the extra credit, ask your spouse. Ask the people that are closest to you in life. You're like, that might be too far. I don't think I want to do that. If you are like me and like a good math equation, I got one for you. Determine your priorities, and then also identify and remove the distractions. I know that this could be a subtraction sign, but I just went with addition, so don't worry about it. So determine your priorities, identify and remove the distractions. So what are the things that constantly get in the way? What system is in place that distracts you from the thing that you actually want to get done? And when you do that, when this is in play, you will experience more love, joy, and peace in your life. And I'm going to go first. I'll go first, okay? There's this thing that happens every single morning, and I don't like it about me. I look at my phone. My alarm goes off on my phone because it's one more thing that my phone does. And I grab it, and I look at it. I turn the alarm off, and most of the time, I don't just put it back down. Most of the time, it stays in my hand. Most of the time, I go and I check my email. Most of the time, I go and I check my calendar. Most of the time, I go and I start checking, okay, what happened? What's the news of the morning so far? Where am I at? And here's the dangerous part. Eventually, ESPN is really close. Like it's right, whoop, it's just right there. And if I get to ESPN, it's going to be 10 more minutes. Like, that's just the reality. I'm going to check scores. I'm going to check my fantasy team. Like, it's going to be a whole thing. The problem with this is it puts me behind schedule. The problem with this is it's time on my phone instead of time with my family. Something that I like to do for my wife, and I serve her in this way, is by having a pot of coffee ready for her when she gets up in the morning. I like to do that. She really likes it for me to do that. I want to do that. And yet this stupid thing that's in my hand is getting in the way. You know what else I really like? When I walk through a morning and don't have to be dragging my son, like, go brush your teeth now. Come do this now. Like, when you're just bringing him back and forth from room to room to get ready because you're late already. You know what 10 minutes does? It gives you margin. It's amazing. It's amazing what happens when we can remove the distraction. So for me, what I'm going to try to do, I'm not going to say I'm going to be perfect. What I'm going to try to do is come up with a different system in the morning so that I can actually spend time and do the thing that I want to do that's most important. You know, reading your Bible every day. Starting it off right. Starting it off with the people that I love the most. Have some eye contact rather than sit next to with both your phones out. Have some eye contact. Have a conversation before they leave the house and go off to work, or you go off to work, do whatever. That's important. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I hope that you do something that is beneficial, important, and fruitful for you and your relationships. So a couple of questions as we wrap up here. What can only you do? Right? I know you're like, well, I mean, that's what? Okay, we all have a job. Most of us have a job, source of income, or taking care of something like your regular thing. And most of the time, that can be replaced by other people. Even my position, we can find another pastor for the church. We can do things. Other people can replace you. But what is it that who you are that cannot be replaced? My wife can only have me as a husband. That's the only me. There's only me. I mean, I guess she could have a second husband, but we're not going to go down there. I'm the only one there, right? My son, I am his father. Nobody else can step in and be like, Luke, I'm your dad. Nope, I'm his father. I'm his dad. That's a role that I will not give away. I will not give away. Where can you choose better instead of good? In light of those roles, where can you choose better instead of good? Don't settle for good. Don't settle for making sure that there's a gourmet meal for Jesus. Go and sit with Jesus. What is better that you're giving up for good right now? And then finally, what are you distracted from that you should be devoted to? Right, this kind of wrap it all up. What are you distracted from that you're devoted to? I hope you actually engage with these questions. I hope you think about them later today. I hope you think about it throughout this week. And I hope that you start to make some choices because of them, some decisions and some actions to follow because of them. Let me pray. We'll get you back out to the ice rink. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are a good God. And even in the moments where we feel out of control, even in the moments where we didn't decide the circumstances that have been thrust at us, that have thrown at us, and that we're experiencing right now, that can be a huge, massive distraction to us. I pray that we would step back from the urgent and we would remember what is most important in our life, what you have told us that is most important, our relationship with you, our relationship with those around us. And I pray that we would start to prioritize our life in a way that would cultivate our highest values, that we would make sure that we are willing to sacrifice good for better, that we can reach to you, that we can embrace you, that we can move in your direction. And we thank you, God, that the moment that we move in your direction, you've already been moving in ours, and you're ready for us, for that embrace, for that relationship. And God, I pray that we would choose you. In your name I pray. Amen. Thanks for being here with us. We'll see you all next week for the conclusion of Bend Don't Break.